This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. All right, I see a light, so that must mean it's go time. Welcome on in to our adventuresome recording. This is going to be one of the more interesting recordings we do all year, I'm sure. This is season 6. This is episode number 20 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2024 Canadian GP race preview show. You've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight. Cody is in his normal recording spot with his normal background. I am not. I am broadcasting from a cabin that time forgot that I have hot-wired with Wi-Fi hotspots and everything else to try to make this work. I am seeing positive signs so far. This is our initial go with the recording, so far so good. So we're going to get into it in just a little bit. So we're going to talk some F1. It's kind of ironic. In a building with almost no technology, we're going to be talking about the highest technology race cars on the planet. But Cody, how you doing, sir? And how's the weather back home, actually?
It's been kind of, touch and go here and there. It got some good storms last night for a little while. It really poured rain, and it looks like some of that is going to be carrying way up north, I guess, this weekend, because it looks like you're going to get something similar for the race. Hopefully not as intense, though.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the ironic thing is the weather that just literally blew through here about maybe an hour or two ago is headed to Montreal, as we will talk about. So we do expect some weather to affect the sessions this weekend, but we're going to get into all that in just a little bit. And so far, this looks like it's still going. So we're going to keep it rolling. You can find our show. If you found our show, welcome. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course YouTube. At Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for that. If you like what you're hearing and you enjoy what you're seeing, in spite of the change of scenery here, you can do us a solid. You can smash the subscribe button, or you can give us a like on YouTube. And if you're on your favorite podcasting app, a 5-star review also will help us come up a little bit better in search results and help us get our content to you that much more quicker. You can email the show, as always, chatnow@outlapf1.com. Takes you there. Just as a continued thank you to everybody who supports the show monetarily and allows us to do recordings like this, because if we didn't have this all fancy smancy equipment, we couldn't do this. So thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of the hashtag Outlap F1 Nation, you can see our show. It's our anchor page. It's in all of our show notes. You can go there, leave us $1, $5, whatever you'd like to do. It's up to you if you want to do that or not. We will accept it. We will happily accept it and use it to, like I said before, upgrade equipment, buy new equipment. All goes back into making the show better. We would be appreciative if you'd like to do that. Lastly, before we hop into everything proper, you can also check out the good folks at Manscaped and their fabulous line of product. And you can take 20% off and free shipping with our code OUTLAP. That's OUTLAP, all one word. Just put that in at checkout and enjoy the reduction in the prices. All right, with the particulars now out of the way, let's just put it this way. We've had a week and a half since Monaco, and the driver market is now spinning its mighty weave all over the place. That merry-go-round is a working, and we're just all passengers at the moment. But here's what we know so far. Here's what's happened. The big story came out yesterday. Red Bull have extended Sergio Perez on a multi-year deal. It's a 2-year extension, and quotes from team principal Christian Horner, quote, "Now is an important time to confirm our lineup for 2025, and we are very pleased to continue working together with Checo. Continuity and stability are important for the team, and both Checo and Max are a successful and robust partnership, securing our first ever 1-2 finish for the team in the championship last year." And Horner goes on to say, Checo has had a strong start to 2024 with second places in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Japan, and then his podium in China. All right. Well, Cody, I'll throw it to you. Checo getting an extension. That takes a seat off the board. Maybe closes some doors for others. Maybe opens some doors for some other places. But what's your thought on it?
It's definitely an important domino to fall. It means that anyone that we thought might be potentially squeezing into that second Red Bull seat, like Yuki Tsunoda or even Carlos Sainz, is now not going to be able to do so. And I find it interesting that they gave him a 2-year deal, which is pretty good considering his questionable run of form last year and over the last couple races. I did think it was an interesting time to announce it, but I guess they had to announce it sometime, and hopefully him being in solid for this 2-year deal will give him a good confidence boost in his performance. We'll see a nice uptick. But I gotta say, I've always kind of liked Checo, but his performance during the middle of last year kind of made us all go, does he really deserve to be in that second seat? Are there better options? And we've kind of gone up and down since then. Start of the season, he looked really good. Everyone was on Checo's side. And now over the last couple of races, he's had that different performance again. And everyone is wondering if he was going to stay or go. I think this was probably the safest bet for Red Bull because Checo's already been there for a couple of years. He's, well settled into the team. He has had really good moments. He's had, several race wins, many podiums. And perhaps most importantly, he's not a serious threat to Max Verstappen. I think Red Bull wants to keep the status quo right now. They have, they're the favorites to win the championship this year. I would say, they're probably going to be the favorites to win next year. We'll have to see. And I think they don't really want to shake anything up right now, at the end of these regulations, and they don't want to shake anything up going into the first year of the new regulations. But I am a little disappointed that we're not going to see somebody like Yuki Tsunoda or Carlos Sainz move into that seat. I think it would have been much more exciting to have someone who's really hungry. Not to say Checo isn't hungry, but someone who's maybe a little closer to Verstappen in terms of performance. It would be really interesting to see someone else in that second seat. But I think Red Bull made a decision.
Yeah, I mean it definitely feels safe. I do think that at least in terms of Red Bull, I think they were kind of in the mentality of trying to stop the bleeding. They've had a lot of their technical staff go other places. They've had Adrian Newey announce that he's leaving the team. They've had all this turmoil off the track. And they really haven't had, other than, hey, we have a great car. What else is keeping Max Verstappen really in that team right now, especially given the acrimony between Christian Horner and Max Verstappen's father? So you give him a known commodity in Checo Perez, and Max has weighed, tried, and measured Sergio Checo Perez for the last several years. He knows what he has to do to beat him. He knows that he's probably really not a legit threat in that second seat. So you're not going to have intra-team turmoil there, which is important, I think, for Max. It also serves as a lure for Max from Red Bull to say, hey, we're still prioritizing your needs first and foremost. It prevents some other potentially more hungry people to take that seat, like a Yuki Tsunoda or a potentially Liam Lawson, who now definitely feels like he's on the outside looking in. I would say the same thing about Yuki Tsunoda as well. But, when we talked about Checo, I said I think it would give him a overall kind of a B minus grade. But he had this great start to the season. So it makes sense to kind of announce it. I guess if you announce it now, I guess you've kind of made your bed and you got to just kind of stick with it. So we'll have to see kind of what the rest of this year holds. If he can be just that rear gunner and can just, support Max and help Max do Max things, then it's a good move. If Sergio is slowly declining, and we're just starting to see the beginnings of that. It's going to get more interesting when the pressure ramps up from places like Ferrari, who are now definitely in the rearview mirror this season. They definitely could be in the mix next season, along with McLaren and maybe potentially Mercedes if they can get their car right. So, and then we're going into a massive unknown with the 2026 regs. So, yeah, I guess if you're trying to me, this seems like I just want to put my house in order. I want to stop the bleeding. Checo, fine, done. End of it. That's kind of what it seems. But I mean, it definitely leaves Daniel Ricciardo not necessarily going to get a seat there. It looks like the rumor mill is telling me he seems to be stable at VCarb and is probably going to get some sort of an extension to stay there. The big questions now within the Red Bull family: what the heck do you do with Yuki Tsunoda, if anything? And what the heck do you do with Liam Lawson? Cody, any thoughts on either of those two?
If it's true that there's rumors that Ricciardo's going to stick around, that would be very surprising to me, because so far this year he is, clearly the poorer performer compared to Yuki Tsunoda, who has been very consistent this year. And my gut would have been that Ricciardo would be out at the end of the season, Liam Lawson would be in, and Yuki Tsunoda, provided he can't find anything better, would be sticking around in RB until something comes around that gets him out of there, because it seems like he's never going to be in it for that Red Bull seat. But yeah, Ricciardo seems to have a good in at the Red Bull family, and we've talked about it before that he is a very good character. He's very good for public appeal for Red Bull. He's very likable, funny guy. Has tons of diehard fans, and very easy to like. But his performance just doesn't seem to be there. So if they keep him around for that PR, it just doesn't sit super great with me. I think at this point it's getting safer and safer to say that Daniel Ricciardo is past his peak, sad as it is to say, and that seat should really be going toward what Red Bull has kind of intended for that team to be all along, which is to be young driver development, to scope them out for the big boy Red Bull seat. And Daniel Ricciardo doesn't really fit that mold anymore. So I really think that they should be giving his seat to Liam Lawson.
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, I was just as kind of surprised as you, because I tend to think the same way. I believe that, the original port of Toro Rosso, or now it's VCarb, or whatever inclination or whatever you want to call it, was supposed to be a junior program to help younger drivers get acclimated to the trials and tribulations of being in Formula One, and having a aging by the minute Daniel Ricciardo, who doesn't seem to be going any faster in a VCarb than he did in anywhere else he's been the last few years, ever since he left. Despite every now and then having a good performance on some very, I think, specific circuits that tend to suit him a little bit better, it hasn't been consistent. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. If I'm Liam Lawson, I'm shaking my head going, what the heck do I have to do? And if I'm Yuki Tsunoda, I'm definitely shaking my head wondering what's the deal? I'm trying to do everything I can. I'm scoring points. I'm the banner wearer for the VCarb team. If it's not for Yuki Tsunoda, they're not in P7 in the constructors right now. It's just that simple. So, yeah, I think these are two guys that they are now doing kind of a bit of a disservice to, if I'm being flat out honest about it. Leaving Checo there definitely puts a bottle on the ladder. So, yeah, I mean, these will be interesting developments. What happens with Tsunoda? What happens with Lawson? We will keep watching, and we'll bring them to you when we know what's going to happen. And, of course, the natural consequence of that is Carlos Sainz is still with a confirmed drive for 2025. The choices are now seemingly dwindling by the minute. It's now a hard no from Red Bull. It's a no from Mercedes. He knows he's out from Ferrari, a team that has emerged in the last week or so that not a lot of people had anywhere on their bingo cards as a major player for Carlos Sainz, appears now to be Williams. So you could have a Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz driver pairing at Williams, which would definitely shore up that seat for sure. And of course, the offer from Audi seems also to remain on the table. So that all is also still out there. The ball is now in Sainz's court as to where he's ultimately going to go. The thing with Williams that is interesting as we transition into 2026, they still have a Mercedes engine, and all of the inklings that I'm hearing out of the Mercedes HPP camp seem to be that they are very happy with their engine that they are developing for 2026. So that could potentially bring Williams back into the equation maybe a little earlier than they may have otherwise anticipated. So, Cody, what are your thoughts on where do you think Sainz ultimately ends up now that the top tiers appear to be all a hard no?
I am a little disappointed that he's not going to end up at what we consider to be a top team. Um, but it's kind of weird at this point. Like, who does he go with? Because there's a lot of talk about still is Audi actually in? Are they not actually in? For the moment they are still going to be Audi, but you hear rumors coming and going all the time about they're changing leadership at Audi, and are they actually going to follow through with what they want to do with the Formula One program? And I would imagine that that's got to be the main thing that's stopping Carlos Sainz from going there right now, because they are not formally Audi yet, and there seems to still be some question marks there. If they were like 100% certain, yes, we're going to put all this investment in that we said we were going to put in, we are going to be the Audi Works team, I think that would be a no-brainer. But with those question marks there, he might think it's safer to go with somebody that's a little more tried and true. Williams performed fairly well last year. They're kind of up and coming at the moment. They just got, their first points for the year, and they seem to really, really be making an effort to move up the ladder. They're trying to modernize, their practices at the team. They're sticking with Alex Albon, who's a tried and true young driver who they're using to really build the team up. And I think Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz would be a really good pairing to do that, to have a strong young pairing there for the long term to help build up the team as they're kind of dragging it into the modern era. As we've kind of heard about all of that stuff going on at Williams with everything being many years behind the top teams. But at least there's a little bit of performance there right now. Sauber looks like bad right now. They're at the back of the grid at the moment. The car looks cool, but it's not going anywhere. And I think he's just a little afraid of what happens if he takes that Sauber seat. Things fall through with Audi, and now he's stuck in the seat that's not going to go anywhere. He's just going to be at the back of the grid the whole time. I think that's what he's afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, at best, the Audi seat is a long-term, multi-year play. That's assuming everything goes according to plan. And we've seen no indications of where their power unit is at, or we've not heard any inklings about any of it other than, they're in the prep stages. Well, those 2026 regulations are coming, and oh, by the way, they're actually coming tomorrow. Slightly transitioned into a different story. They're going to drop around 3:30 Eastern tomorrow, so I will try to stay connected to social media to try to pass those things along to you. But anyway, back to Sainz. I'm not surprised that he's thinking Williams is probably the better of the options, because you've got now, I think, some really good leadership in James Vowles. That team is funded. Doralton is definitely putting in the structure and the necessary things to bring that team a lot farther forward than it has been in a very long time. And then we're just kind of seeing all of that cycle through. And then when you talk about 2026, the last time Williams was uber competitive was that 2014 engine change, where they had the Mercedes engine and they were able to capitalize on it. So I'm wondering if Williams isn't trying to think along those lines as well. So because of all that, it makes a lot of sense given what has happened. The fact of the matter is the Mercedes seat doesn't seem to be very viable for Carlos Sainz, because Toto Wolff is very high on Kimi Antonelli, and every time I read anything out of the Mercedes camp, it's Kimi Antonelli's had this great test, and everything seems to be going swimmingly there. And Toto regrets not going harder after Max Verstappen as a teenager way back then. So I think he's trying to fix that old sin and atone for that. And because of that, I think that just shuts Carlos Sainz out of the top tier seats. It sucks because I think he's a super talented guy. He's a fighter. He's ready to win now. He just doesn't have anybody that wants to give him a drive. So I've made my bed and already said I think he's going to eventually settle and go to Audi, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up at Williams. All right. One driver we also know who will be on the move. That is Esteban Ocon. Now, here's the several things about Mr. Esteban Ocon. Number one, he will be racing in Canada despite all of the rumors from the Bruno Famine kerfuffle that happened between him and Ocon in Monaco. So that has been put to bed. However, Jack Doohan is going to get an FP1 drive in Ocon's car. Interesting developments. Development number two, Esteban Ocon and Alpine have both said Ocon will be leaving the team at the end of his contract this season. So that now leaves him without a drive for 2025, opens up a seat at Alpine for 2025. You start looking at potential options. And of course, number one on the list, there's Carlos Sainz again. Could also count Jack Doohan, the guy who's getting the FP1 seat, in there as well. Throw Zhao Guan Yu into that mix as well. I've heard some rumblings about that and Alpine as a potential move if Sauber did not want to renew his contract. And also, there's Mick Schumacher sitting on the bench, not currently in an F1 drive, although he does drive for Alpine's WEC entry and will be competing at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Interesting all over the place. Cody, what's your thought on Ocon, where he's going to go, or if anywhere?
He has kind of the same limited options that Carlos Sainz has. And I would say, based on what we've seen over the last couple seasons, that most teams that are gunning for a driver would be gunning for Carlos Sainz over Esteban Ocon. So I think his options will become even more limited because Carlos Sainz is probably going to get that next spot wherever it's at. I think it's pretty realistic that he's going to stay on the grid. I think that he is a pretty talented driver. He has a race win under his belt. And while there does seem to be some history of him not playing well with teammates, he's still very talented, and I think in the right spot he'll still do very well. But yeah, he's gonna. I would believe he would probably end up at Haas because Haas seems to be kind of afraid of ever since the whole Schumacher Mazepin season, they seem to be a little afraid of going with fresh young guys. And Esteban Ocon is a proven talent, and he's got many years of experience under his belt now. So I would see Haas as being a legitimate place for him to go, and they're performing fairly well at the moment too. So it's not exactly the worst place to end up. Who knows what's going to happen with that Alpine team if they're going to stay Alpine for very much longer. So it might be the best thing for him. Everything that I've been seeing in Formula One news is that they've been calling it a mutual decision. So Esteban Ocon has been looking around, probably not wanting to stay at the team, and Alpine has been looking probably for other people's services anyway. So it is kind of funny that this announcement comes right after the blow up out of Monaco, where he had that incident, and everyone was thinking, "Oh my God, they're going to ban him for a race." Which not ban him, excuse me, suspend him for a race, the team. And I didn't believe for a minute that would actually happen. That would be like really, really out there. But yeah, he will be racing in Canada, but yeah, he will not be at Alpine Beyond this year. And as far as his replacement at Alpine goes, I don't know. It seems to be that they're moving in the direction of Jack Doohan by giving him more time in the seat for practice and whatnot, and doing performs very well in Formula 2. I think it would be pretty exciting to see him anytime we get, fresh new young drivers into Formula 1. I think it's great for the sport. You get to see some new talent, see who might be the next big thing, and I think it would be excellent to see him in there.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with a lot of what you said there. Yeah, in terms of his replacement, I don't see Carlos Sainz wanting to go to Alpine. That doesn't seem to make sense. The Zhao Guan Yu link is something that came up, I think, fairly recently. The Mick Schumacher link is, I think, some logic being applied that he's already kind of in the family. I would put Jack Doohan as kind of he's probably got the inside track at this point, because I also saw some stuff come out earlier this week that said they were very happy with his simulator work and his reserve driver capabilities and all that. So when you start to hear, teams talking people up, that's usually sometimes a primer to, maybe he's in our plans, and maybe, later on, summer break time, we just say, hey, Oscar Piastri, you want to come drive for Alpine? But we'll have to see kind of where that goes, and then we'll see if we have another interesting set of Twitter that goes on because of it. But yeah, I mean, I do think, in all seriousness, I think Jack Doohan would make a lot of sense to drive for Alpine. I don't see Sainz as doing that. Zhao doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think he's going to be probably one of those guys who's going to probably find himself on the outside looking in, which is kind of unfortunate. But that's just kind of how this merry-go-round has got to have people who have to leave it. It's just the math doesn't work any other way. But I do think at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to have clarification on all of this until Carlos Sainz makes up his mind. Once you see the Sainz move done, the Ocon move is going to be the next one, because I think he's now the next driver that people are, or at least some of these lower teams are going to want to go after because of his experience. And then you're going to see all the other dominoes fall, I think, really, really quickly. So the ball is literally in Carlos Sainz's court. Where does he want to go, and what does he do? And we're going to sit back and enjoy the ride, because that's all we can do is just ride this thing until it stops. Did want to bring this is a kind of an older story. It's something I hadn't necessarily had a chance to share or talk about, but there was a noticeable change in the tone concerning the Andretti F1 bid from FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who seemed to indicate that he was advising Andretti to more buy an existing team or buy into an existing team, as opposed to now trying to admit them as an 11th team. We talked about this story about a month ago, that there seemed to be this cessation of hostilities between FOM and the FIA, and now suddenly we're getting alignment into the Andretti story. I don't like how this looks. I don't like how it feels. I think this kind of reeks of a bit of dirty pool. But Andretti continues to work at pace. That's what they've said to all of this. So I guess it's another turn in the Andretti saga here. Cody, what's your thought on it?
It's kind of disappointing that he said this, because we at least had hope for a little while that due to the disagreement between FIA and FOM, that maybe he would actually still be getting into the grid at some point as an 11th team. And now this big switch in statement from Sulayem makes it sound like that the hope for that is gone, and that's really disappointing, because it makes it seem like the teams have won, that they're going to be able to limit the grid to 10 teams like they wanted, and keep their slices of the pie and all that money and what have you. I think in the long term, it's bad for the sport. We've said that several times before, that limiting new teams coming into the sport is not a good look, and it's not good for long-term prospects. But if that's the route he's got to take, I got to wonder if he would take it. It's at that point, if they're going to make it so that he can't come in as an 11th team, and he has to buy an existing team, you have to find a team that wants to sell. And how many of them are there right now? The value of those teams has just gone up and up in recent years. Any of those teams that are thinking of selling are going to want to maximize everything they can get out of it. So who does he buy at that point? Maybe, I don't know, Alpine, perhaps. Sauber, if the Audi stuff falls through, Haas, if they're wanting to sell, although Haas did just sell or announce that they're closing down the Stewart-Haas NASCAR team. And during that, they said that supposedly that they have no plans of doing anything with the F1 team other than what they're doing now. They don't intend to sell it or close down or anything like that. So, his options would be limited. It seems to be, like you said, kind of dirty pool to be like, yeah, if you want in, you're going to have to buy an existing team, but no teams are selling. So, yes, you're screwed.
Yeah, I read that and my head just kind of went, oh, God dang it. Like, really, we're going to have to do this. And now we're going to go this way. And, I've been screaming, I want to give all these people an economics lesson. These people are smart people. It's a temporary smaller pie until you bring in enough value that he makes up for the piece of the pie that you're giving up, and then you get more pie. That's how it works. That's how growth works. That's how growth works in any organization. And F1 is so traumatized by the COVID experience, it seems, that nobody wants to look beyond their own interests. And it's just, if this is how this peters out, and look, Andretti has given no indication that that's how this is going to go. It hasn't petered out on their end at all. But if that's how if they're just going to drag this out until it does wane and eventually it becomes not viable for them, that really sucks. And I will not be happy as a fan. And it'll be a very tough pill to swallow. But, we will continue to monitor and we will continue to look for it. When we get further updates, we'll bring them to you as we learn them. And with all that, we're going to take a quick break. I hate to leave on a downer there, but sometimes that's just how it goes. So we're going to take a quick break, re-rack, come back. We'll focus on the Canadian Grand Prix itself. The weather forecast looks definitely very spicy. The track facts, there's a whole new resurfacing job that has been done, so who knows what that's going to throw into it. The weather looks interesting. It doesn't look like it's Red Bull running away by 30 seconds this year. So anyway, we're going to get into all that, so come on back and we'll talk about it. You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, welcome back in. This is Season 6. This is Episode 20 of the Outlap F1 podcast, and it's our 2024 Canadian GP race preview. And you've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight. And just because I feel like I'm in a Canadian maple leaf house type situation, so I'm doing my best to get into the Canadian spirit. I'm about as far north as Montreal, which is actually kind of interesting. But we're going to get into the track facts that are brought to us by the good folks at Pirelli Motorsport. So Cody, tell us about the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
All right. This weekend, the Formula One Circus is traveling to our neighbors up north for the Canadian Grand Prix, located at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Number of laps around the circuit is 70, and the circuit length is 4.361 kilometers, or 2.709 miles. Tire selection from Pirelli for this race is the C3, C4, and C5 compounds, and their track characteristics are a 5 out of 5 for traction, 5 out of 5 for braking, 1 out of 5 for lateral load, 3 out of 5 for tire stress, 5 out of 5 for track evolution, a 1 out of 5 for asphalt grip despite the track being resurfaced, a 1 out of 5 for asphalt abrasion, and a 1 out of 5 for downforce. Qualifying lap record around this circuit is a 1 minute 10.240 seconds, and that was set by Sebastian Vettel in 2019. while the race lap record is a 1 minute 13.078 seconds. That was set by Valtteri Bottas also in 2019. For most wins at this circuit, we see some big names with big tallies. It is a tie for first between Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher with a whopping 7 wins each. Second place, several tallies back, would be Nelson Piquet with 3 wins in Canada. And then there are 7 drivers tied at 2 victories in Canada. A few of the notable drivers being Sebastian Vettel, Ayrton Senna, and Max Verstappen. Most constructor wins around Canada is very close at the top. It's Ferrari with 14, followed by McLaren with 13 victories, and then Williams with 7, and a 3-way tie between Brabham, Mercedes, and Red Bull with 4 wins apiece. What's the circuit like, Andy?
All right, the fast, low downforce circuit is usually one of the drivers' favorites. The track is quite stop-start with lots of heavy braking chicanes and the famous hairpin to get the anchors working hard. Out of most corners, though, the track is quick and flowing, while the most iconic piece of the circuit comes right at the end of the lap, the Wall of Champions, so-called, after excursions into it from Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, and Michael Schumacher during the famous 1999 Canadian Grand Prix weekend. As for the weather, and as we mentioned earlier, the weather seems to play a large factor in Canada, and it looks like this weekend will be no exception. For qualifying on Saturday, it was in the mid-80s today in Montreal. That's not going to be the case. The front that just came through where I am is headed to Montreal now at high speed. High of only 67 degrees, winds out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10, a 60% chance of rain, and I'll tell you, if the rain is coming, it's going to come down pretty hard. So for Sunday, again, considerable cloudiness with, again, those occasional rain showers. Probably just what blew through here a couple hours ago. High is 68. Winds out of the west again, 5 to 10. 40% chance of rain. So 2 things we're going to want to watch for sure. The resurfacing and what that does to the tires and the tire life, and the weather. Both of those things are definitely going to play an issue throughout the course of the weekend. All right, so we're going to now hop into our predictions as to what we think. We're going to take a shot at what we think is going to happen over the course of the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. And we will start with the pole sitter. It's finally no longer the Max Verstappen Take It Award. Charles Leclerc ripped it out of him last time out in Monaco. Cody, do we think we have a repeat of that, or are we back to normal service resumed with Max on the pole? What you got?
You know, I said for a whole bunch of weeks there that I was going to keep picking Max Verstappen until someone else got the pole, and Leclerc finally took it away from him. And you know what? I'm still going to go with Max Verstappen. I think Monaco was a little bit of an odd one out. I think had Max not hit the wall on his lap, that he might have had a chance at getting the pole there. So I still think that there's good evidence that it's his to lose.
All right, so you've got Max getting back onto form, as it were, at least in terms of the pole position. I, however, am going to ride this Leclerc wave as long as it can go. I do think just the nature of this track really will suit what's working well with the Ferrari car. I kind of looked at it and I say, you know, it's very slow speed. Red Bull doesn't love the slow speed, although they're still very good in it. I do think Verstappen's going to give it a fight. I do think it's going to come down to the end. I'm all for this qualifying battle, especially if it's in the rain. But I'm going Charles Leclerc for pole position. So I'm going with a different... I'm not taking the safety blanket with Max Verstappen here. I'm going to go Charles Leclerc for pole. Watch that come back to bite me. But anyway. All right. So our qualifying lap time last year was set in wet conditions with a 125.858. That was as the circuit was drying. And then there was one of those rogue showers that came across the circuit just as Q3 was starting. Do we see something similar to that here? I'll go first with the lap time. I do think, given the forecast I was just talking about, I do think you're going to be playing peekaboo with the rain, just like I'm doing here. So I've got a 122.547 rain-affected lap time. Cody, what do you have?
I do think that rain is going to play into the times here. So I'm going to go a little faster than the time that was set last year, considering that was wet conditions. I don't think we're going to go that much faster. But the cards have improved. All the teams pretty much have improved over last year. So I'm going to go with a 1 minute 24.914 seconds.
So we will move on to the race and the race podium itself. Last year's podium featured Max Verstappen taking the win, Fernando Alonso taking second place. My, how that team has fallen. And Lewis Hamilton coming home on the podium as well. All right. So, Cody, what you got for your race podium?
Probably pretty different makeup from last year. I do think Max Verstappen is still going to be winning this race. But I do think it's going to be Ferrari taking the rest of the podium. I've got Charles Leclerc in second and Carlos Sainz in third.
All right, very good. I am just going to double down on my Leclerc momentum here. I do think, like I said earlier, I think this is a track that suits the Ferraris, so I'm just going to kind of go with it. I'm going to say Charles Leclerc will take the win, but I do think Max Verstappen will definitely be there. I don't think he's going to be in sixth place like in Monaco. I think that was the aberration, not the norm. But I hope it's a fight late, and I hope that there's actually a McLaren in there, but I can't predict it because this has been McLaren kryptonite. So I've got Charles Leclerc taking the win, Max Verstappen coming in second, Carlos Sainz looking to tell everybody, hey, I'm still here. Third place coming home on the podium as well. Okay, so we'll move on to our fastest lap. And the driver, last year's fastest driver was Sergio Checo Perez, and he set his lap time of a 1:14.481, the Sunday being the more drier of the days of the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. I'll go first. I'm going to give, I guess I'm just feeling Charles Leclerc here. I'm going with Charles Leclerc again to take the fastest lap with a 1:15.647. Cody, what you got?
I definitely think we're going to get at least enough dry weather on Sunday to get a pretty good lap time going here. Going slightly faster than last year with a 1 minute 14 flat. And I kind of feel like I just threw a dart at the dartboard here for who's going to get that fastest lap. I'm going with Oscar Piastri. I think he's going to be riding high after getting that first podium of the season in Monaco. And I think he's going to be going around pretty fast here.
Did you get a chance to see the meme of the two Leclercs? Where it's a meme with there's a meme with Charles and his brother Arthur both in Ferrari jumpsuits, and Oscar, because he's air quote been adopted by the Leclerc family, is now like sticking his head across, out from behind of a building to kind of photobomb it. It's really quite funny. It's actually really good, and I'm loving him on social media. I'm loving Oscar Piastri on. Yeah, I'm loving the dry sense of humor. It just it speaks to a part of my funny bone that I'm just loving right now. But anyway, I'm going to go. Oh, well, anyway, where were we? Oh, bonus picks. Let's do those. So I've selected P6, P8, and P11. I'm going to go with George Russell for P6. I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso for P8 because I do think he likes this track and will go fairly well, and it'll give some Aston Martin some points. And I have P11. Canada not going to get its homeboy some points here. Lance Stroll coming home in P11 there. Cody, what do you have for our bonus picks?
I think Lewis Hamilton, based on the fact he's got 7 wins here and that he got the podium last year, he is very good around this track. He must like it a lot. So I think he's going to pretty much extract everything he can out of that car this weekend, which is going to put him right around that P6. Yuki Tsunoda has been performing very well lately. Seems to be, cleaning up those lower points paying positions all the time. So I've got Tsunoda in P8, and then I have his teammate Daniel Ricciardo just missing out points in P11.
All right, very good. So for our prop bet, we are nominating Team Canada, and that of course means Lance Stroll. And we're not going to have him be on the podium or anything like that. We just want to see, does he make Q3? So something that's attainable for him with the car that he has. I'm going to put my best Canadian accent and I'm going to say, sorry, no. Cody, what you got?
I had to hem and haw over this one for a few minutes because he has done okay in qualifying the last couple times out. But yeah, any time where we're talking about Lance Stroll being competitive, my gut says no. So I think he's going to miss out on Q3 this time.
All right, very good. And we will recap our predictions when we do our review on Sunday, and we'll see how close we were to the actual truth of what happened over the course of the weekend. Last note before we head on out for that Canadian Grand Prix weekend is when and where to watch your F1 this weekend across the U.S. broadcasting channels. So FP1 kicks off Friday, 1:25 p.m. So these are very nice times if you're in the U.S. That can be found on ESPNU. FP2, Friday, 4:55 p.m. Eastern. Again, ESPNU for that. FP3 and qualifying are both going to be on ESPN News. FP3 kicks off 12:25 p.m. Eastern, and qualifying itself kicks off 3:55 p.m. Eastern. Both of those are on ESPN News. The race itself will air Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern. That will be on Big ABC free-to-air commercial-free coverage. So that's a great thing for coverage in the U.S. In terms of normally I like to do the live tweet of qualifying. I'm going to just say right now I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to be scrambling to get back from where I am now to my home base. I don't think I'm going to make it. I may have to stop somewhere and actually consume qualifying, or just wait until I get home and then do it. So I'm not going to be able to do a live tweet of qualifying, but I will do my best to try to keep people informed as stuff breaks throughout the course of the weekend. I'm definitely interested to see what these new technical regulations look like and what the buzz is from that. So it's going to be an interesting media day for sure. But we'll be back to recap everything either Sunday night or Monday, depending on what the schedules look like. But anyway, we will do that. We will recap everything. We'll see what these predictions shake out. Cody, any final thoughts before we head on out?
I'm just trying to imagine what you're doing your best Canadian accent, but I think we're going to get a different Canadian accent in Montreal. I wonder what the French Canadian accent sounds like to the French. It's just a random thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been. Maybe one day I will go and I will tell you. The closest I've ever been was actually Ottawa, where every sign had both English and French on it. So the closer you get to Quebec, the more French you see in Canada. So yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure they probably do the same thing. It's probably both in English and in French, obviously in a city there. But yeah, we'll be back either Sunday or Monday to recap everything. So take care, folks. And I will try to do my best to navigate the roads getting home. And as always, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at OutlapF1 Podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.